So welcome everybody to the Retail and Consumer Goods Tug meetup for this month. Yeah, great to have you all coming back. This is our first meetup back since Tableau Conference 2025, and we should have a pretty good session here lined up for everyone. So a quick peek at the agenda. We've got a few welcome and introductions. We're going to have the quick Tableau Conference recap. And then actually we're going to flip-flop here at the bottom. We're going to talk about getting involved with the broader Tableau community. And then we'll hand it off to Ryan. Ryan, who you probably recognize from the big stage now, was an Iron Viz finalist. So we'll get into that in a little bit as well. So quick introduction if this is your first time here. My name is Blake. I am one of the 3 co-leaders of the Retail and Consumer Goods Tug. And alongside me stand Ojo and Matt. So 3 of us are spread out right now between the US and Canada, but Ojo's actually going to come down to Texas at some point too. We need to figure out how we ended up so clustered. But a quick peek at just the general retail growth over time. We thought 5 meetings in now, we're still pretty early on from that initial inception point. We wanted to take a moment to reflect on the journey with y'all. So it's now been 10 months since the birth of the Retail and Consumer Goods Tug, and we're standing strong at about 250 members to date. So excellent turnout. Very happy to see a good group of you all here today. And that's just across 5 meetings. So a fairly strong cadence, averaging about a meeting every 2 months. And yeah, I'm liking that trajectory. We've got that rocket here to suggest that we're heading up to the moon. So very happy to see it. And kicking off a quick recap here from Tableau Conference 2025, we had a couple big wins for the Retail Tug. Starting things off, we had actually presentations from all 3 of the Tug leaders. So Ojo had presented, and his is actually recorded and available on Salesforce Plus. And Matt and I also co-presented. Ours was not recorded, but we will be representing come September for the DataFam, or is it the DataFam Tug? Yeah, so we'll be presenting there come September. And it wasn't just presentations from us as far as the wins at Tableau Conference. We actually co-hosted a in-person meetup alongside the Marketing Tug. So it was a great turnout there. It was very successful, and we're looking forward to partnering with them hopefully more in the future. And then additionally, we had fairly strong retail representation at TC this year. So just calling out a couple of those retailers that were able to present or show up at TC this year. We had Carrefour, HEB, no surprise, Home Depot, OXO, John Lewis Partnership, Nike, Under Armour. The list goes on, but yeah, great turnout. Very exciting to see. So hopefully we can get that list to continue to grow and get all of these retailers involved with the Tug as well. And one more quick plug. I think generally speaking, you all should be getting involved. You're all here today, which is fantastic. So as far as Tableau user groups go, keep doing what you're doing. Attend Tug sessions and reach out if you're feeling confident in a particular topic, or you think you have something that might be valuable. Reach out and volunteer to speak. The 3 of us at the Retail Tug would be happy to host any of you. And additionally, there are tugs out there that are geared towards, more beginner or novice speakers as well. So if you feel like the stakes are too high here, spoiler alert, they're not too high, but there's plenty of options for where you can start to get involved. And then additionally, outside of Tableau user groups, community projects are a great resource as well. So, I'm sure at this point most of you have heard of Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday. Or BizViz 52, as Ojo could speak to, is a new community project that he actually co-owns. I don't know, Ojo, if you want to speak to that briefly.
Absolutely. So Blake, thanks for kicking it off. We have Rain and the Tableau team for making. I want to give a big round of applause and a shout out to the Tableau folks who made the community come together and the events come together. And I wanted to give them a shout out. We couldn't have done half as much without their support. A large number of DataFam showed up in that event. Unfortunately, we don't have pictures to prove it, but you'll have to take my word for it. And yes, Blake, thanks to you for being my accountability partner and pushing me towards Makeover Monday last year. I've not missed a single one this year. And I was so motivated that I got started with the BizWiz 52. It's not a multivitamin, not for 52-year-olds, but it's for getting your 52 business dashboards out of the door in 52 weeks. We started middle of the year because we believe that there's never a better time to start than now. So we started week 21. We are into our third week already, and I'll stick the link shortly. Back to you, Blake.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one more call out. I'm glad that we have Rain in attendance for the start of this meeting, but we did want to shout out the broader Tableau community Slack. So this QR code here over on the right is not the same one that we had initially pointing to the Retail Tug Slack channel. This is actually all of the broader Tableau community. So inside of here, you'll see everything from community projects to general Tableau community support. The data fam is one of the most powerful selling points for Tableau. And that Slack channel is going to be your one-stop shop for a whole bunch of resources. And it's a great place to be. So if you haven't joined yet, scan that QR code and join the party. And with that, Ojo, I can pass it back to you if you want to introduce Ryan here.
Right. Ryan needs no introduction, but I must. Ryan is a star from Toronto. He is literally my neighbor, probably 10 minutes walk from my place. But most importantly, he's now a global star in the Tableau ecosystem. He's been doing fantastic work over the years. He's a Tableau public ambassador. He's the IronViz finalist. He has made it to the top 10 IronViz qualifiers. How many times? 3 times over? 5 times?
Yeah, 3.
3 times, okay. And then he's won several other international and global Viz contests outside the Tableau ecosystem using, of course, Tableau. And I remember running into him at one of the top banks here when he was doing his internship. So he's been doing this for a long time. It goes on to show the love and passion he shares for the community. And I will not hold anyone back, but hand this over to Ryan whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up and sharing your knowledge with us.
No worries. Thanks, Ojo, for that introduction. Yeah, so hi, everyone. I just want to thank Ojo, Matt, Blake for inviting me to speak at the Retail Tug. I don't have a retail-focused topic to talk about, but my hope is that what I talk about here, you can apply to the work that you do day in, day out in the retail and consumer goods space. So as Ojo mentioned, I was part of the IronViz finale earlier this year at Tableau conference. So on the screen is a picture from the event. There I am along with Catherine and Bo on the stage. So I'm going to be talking about today 5 tips from my experience in IronViz that hopefully you can apply to your work today. 2 of them are going to be more technical, so I'll save those for the later half of my talk. 3 of them are more around design and storytelling, so I'll start off with those. I'll cover this slide briefly. Ojo already gave me a good intro. So I work at Deloitte. I'm a visual analytics lead. I'm based here in Toronto. We've been using Tableau for probably around 8 or 9 years now. Started off doing Makeover Mondays as a way to kind of learn Tableau. And then I kind of just kept doing it and got more involved with the community. Last year I was named a Tableau public ambassador, and this year I was part of the IronViz final. I also co-lead a Tableau user group as well, the Sports Tug. So if you're interested in sports data, how Tableau is used in professional sports, feel free to reach out and we can get you involved with that user group. So I just want to give some context on IronViz if you're not too familiar with it. So IronViz is one of the biggest data visualization competitions in the world. Hundreds of people from around the globe participate in it every year. The way it works, there's kind of 2 stages to the competition. at first, there's kind of a first round feeder contest where people submit visualizations around a certain theme. From that, a top 3 gets selected who participate in the live finale at the conference, which happened last, or 2 months ago, I guess now, in May. So I was one of those 3 people that were selected. And in the finale, the data set and topic that we provided was the Federal Aviation Administration Wildlife Strikes database. So this data set basically captured all wildlife strikes with aircrafts in the United States since 1990. We were given the data in early February with a submission around mid to late March. So we had around 7 weeks to build our dashboard, prepare a presentation, and some of the key competition rules. So we had a 20-minute live build time. So we had to rebuild our dashboard in 20 minutes on stage. And our presentation, which we did live, could only be 3 minutes long. And of course, we were only allowed to use the provided data set. So the Wildlife Strikes database, we couldn't bring in any external data sources. So I'll give you just a quick tour of the dashboard I built. I did write an article, which Ojo put in the chat, which went through my entire kind of approach and process to building this. So if you're interested to learn more, you can check that out. And the finale is also recorded as well. So Ojo, maybe you can put a link to the YouTube recording so people can check out the full presentation. But basically, my approach to the data was looking at it from the bird standpoint. So from the standpoint of, from the perspective of a bird, and thinking about, if you were a bird, how would you use this data to help you migrate safely? Because just as much as humans and aviation is affected by wildlife strikes, wildlife is as well, particularly birds. So that was kind of the approach I took, where a user can select between 3 different species of birds, learn more, understand their migration patterns and historical trends, and then go in to actually plan a migration trip. So this was kind of the idea I had around essentially making a bird flight planner, like a migration planner. So someone can select, a particular airport to, went out of full screen, to start from as their origin. They can pick a destination airport as well, and then be presented with a flight path from their origin to their destination, passing through however many airports, and then ultimately view the historical data on that particular flight route. So here, the intention here is to show, based on the historical strike hotspots, how you could find a path through it. So looking for those areas where there is a lack of data or no data, indicating that those are safe windows to pass through these hotspots, ultimately down to your destination. And then I wrapped it up by just talking about the problem more in general. The FAA themselves say that there is a need for better and increased reporting, as data is fundamental to developing mitigation strategies for bird strikes. So I kind of sum it up here by saying, wildlife strikes is a problem that unfortunately can't be solved, right, with just more human air travel, increasing bird populations. So it's something that has to be better managed, and we can do that by having a better data foundation to help build more impactful mitigation strategies. So that's a really quick run through of my viz. Again, check out the presentation from the conference to see how I went through it. But that hopefully gives you a taste of what I built. I'll go through a couple technical kind of approaches of how I actually built a couple of these features in the later 2 tips in my presentation. Okay, so the first tip I want to cover is, I'm calling it empathy. This is kind of taking a step back from Tableau development, from data preparation, all the way back to when you first think about building a dashboard for a particular audience. I think it's really important that before you even dive into development, you think about who your user is and you really understand them, so you can ultimately build something in the end that is usable for them, and that that the dashboard won't just sit on the shelf, which unfortunately happens a lot. So what does having empathy mean? Understanding your audience, their needs, their goals, their challenges, and their behavior. So like I said, this comes before getting into Tableau development. You want to understand who your audience is and what they're ultimately looking to accomplish by building this dashboard. So really understanding the user. How did I apply this to IronViz? So what I'm talking about here is like a general approach, right? If you think about when you're building dashboards for work, you want to understand who you're building it for and how they'll ultimately use the tool. But for IronViz, it's different, right? Because you're not building business dashboards. It's a lot of more of a focus on storytelling design. So this directly doesn't apply to IronViz, but this is kind of how I thought about it. So how did I kind of think about empathy for IronViz? So firstly, I thought about who is the user, what are their objectives, and how will they use the tool? How will they use the visualization I created? So thinking about those questions, this is how these are the answers I kind of came up with. So for who is the user, there's kind of two categories. So there were the three judges who are Tableau savvy judges, and as well as the audience, which in San Diego it was thousands of people, but then there were also many more online. So those would also be Tableau savvy, data savvy people as well. So the user I had in mind was someone who is familiar with Tableau, familiar with data, familiar with common chart types, and so on. What are their objectives? So IronViz is judged based on three categories: design, analysis, and storytelling. And those three categories really guided how I thought about what I ultimately wanted to accomplish in the viz. So I wanted to have a solid design, showcasing good analysis, and having a really memorable and unique story as well. So those were, I think, the objectives of the audience, right? The audience ultimately wants to see a good story in a good visualization with good design, and those were my objectives as well. And then lastly, how will they use the dashboard? So the judges in judging our submissions, ultimately they were able to actually interact with and use the dashboard to judge a portion of the scoring categories. And then the audience, they would not get to be hands-on with the dashboard I created. So this is where I really put a lot of thought into the live demo. So I needed to build something that I could easily go through in a presentation and have the clear message that I wanted to communicate come out really nicely. And that's just because the audience wouldn't be able to be hands-on with my dashboard. So this is how I kind of thought about it. But then IronViz wouldn't be what it is without the constraints that they place on you. So this kind of thinking is wrapped in this constraint of the 20-minute build time and the 3-minute presentation. So of course, without these limitations, you could really go crazy, design what you want, develop what you want in order to meet these objectives and these goals. But with these limitations, I really had to control my ideas because everything wouldn't be possible to build within 20 minutes. But also, I really had to control my ideas and select things very intentionally in order to achieve these objectives, just because everything wouldn't be possible to build within 20 minutes and also present within 3 minutes. So for IronViz, the kind of empathy aspect was a bit different, but ultimately I did do a lot of the work and thinking about understanding my user, ultimately what were the goals and objectives before getting into Tableau development. So that's my first tip. And maybe it goes without saying, but I think understanding your audience, understanding your user is really so important in the visual analytics dashboard development process before getting too deep into development. Okay, tip number 2. So my second tip is about planning and iteration. It kind of feeds off the first tip about understanding your user, but this also goes kind of before the development, the core Tableau development. You want to have a good plan, and you want to have an iterative process as well. So before jumping into Tableau, plan what you want to build and how, and then also have an iterative approach to design prior to getting too deep into Tableau development. During IronViz, I really had to do a lot of iteration, just when refining on my story and refining the development as well. And I think that really reflects the same when building dashboards for a business audience as well. You always want to plan how you're going to build it before you jump into development, and also have iteration before with your user, with your audience, in order to refine and tweak things before getting too deep into development. So kind of how this is reflected in my IronViz process is what I'm showing here. This was how I thought about my end-to-end build process. So we had 7 weeks roughly to build the dashboard. And I started initially looking at the story and the data. So I thought about, how we can create that. This is where I came up with the idea of going from the burst perspective, and at the same time looking at data. Then I got into the design portion, development, and then the last couple of weeks were focused just on practicing my build, getting it under 20 minutes, and the presentation. So where does kind of that iteration fall in this entire process? And there's there's a few key spots. So firstly is the design and story overlap. So in this design phase, what I was doing mainly was designing the user experience and the user interface. So what does that mean? That's sort of like the overall structure, the user flow through the dashboard, and then also what were the different dashboard Tableau components I was going to use to enable that particular design, with the output being ultimately a wireframe that I would go into development with. So that's a very standard process that you might apply to your dashboard building, which is what I tried to do here with IronViz as well. So at this point, when I was creating my design, thinking about the design, I was also iterating on the story as well, because ultimately, your design has to communicate the story, like they have to be in sync. So this was that first point of iteration, where I went through, different structures for the design, how I could use different dashboard components, and so on. The next point was between design and development. So this point has to do a lot with feasibility. So I had a lot of ideas of how I could build different portions of the dashboard, such as navigation, chart types, different interactive components. There's many different options to build things in Tableau. So I was judging the feasibility of all of those. Having in mind the 20-minute time limit, look and feel, alignment with the story, and so on. So oftentimes when certain components didn't work that I had an idea for, I had to change the design and iterate, and so on. So I think this kind of feasibility aspect is something you should incorporate too into your process. Really judging what is possible to do in Tableau. And then the next point of iteration, this kind of falls out of the design process, but I do want to mention it since it was really important to my whole build. Iterating on the build to fit within the 20-minute time limit. So this was where I was doing a lot of practice to figure out, could I build this in 20 minutes? And surprise, surprise, the answer was no. The first time I built my dashboard, it was over an hour. So I really had to go do like a cost benefit analysis, see what I could remove that didn't impact the story too much. And this was the point where I did all of that. I must have built my dashboard maybe 20 to 30 times in order to get it, almost second nature to where I could build it fast, under 20 minutes. So that's what was going on here. And then the last part was iterating on the live demonstration and the presentation. So I built, from the quick demo I showed earlier, I built almost like a tool where a user can select their species, select their origin destination, and I had to try to pick an example of that would really illustrate what I wanted to communicate in the story, and that would bring out the insights in my visuals. So I spent some time, trying to find origin destination combinations, species with the species as well, in order to really, bring out and showcase my dashboard in the best possible light. So so storyboarding. So going back to kind of the design iteration, I just wanted to show what that looked like when I was doing that in my build process. So this kind of falls before the Tableau development. So if I just go back here, that kind of storyboard that I showed was maybe around week 2, week 3 when I was getting into the design. This is how I thought about the user journey and the user experience. So you see here, things I'm doing is I'm structuring the story into the different pages that you would see on my dashboard as I built it. Then also in the lower row, I have kind of what was going on in my head in terms of how I could structure the dashboard. Having species selection on the left, having like a panel in the middle. These did not translate into the final design and the build, but this was just kind of my ideation. And that's where, I come back to the point of iteration, having all of your ideas down, and then, figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't before you get into the actual Tableau build. It can save you time, but also just really help you build something that will accomplish what you need it to. So this is kind of where I was doing that. And then how this is kind of reflected in the viz. You see I kind of have the same structure in terms of, the pages. Of course, the layout and the visuals are a bit different, but ultimately it's the same user experience, the same user journey I had in mind, but I tweaked things here and there as I iterated on the viz. Okay, so that's my second tip about planning and iteration. I think that's important when you build, your business dashboards on the job. But for IronViz, it was very important, and it saved me a lot of time in the end. And I had one slide here that I forgot about, but I'll mention this. So this is the about iterating and planning the presentation. So if you look at the recording that I did, or the recording of the final presentation for IronViz, I did an example for the Common Nighthawk where I went from Buffalo to Fort Myers. And there was reasoning behind that. So the first decision was it had context. So on the left are actual migration routes for the Common Nighthawk. They kind of go from the Northwest Canada through the Midwest United States down to South America for the winter. So they cross the Gulf. That's kind of what I tried to reflect in the actual migration path that I picked on stage. I'm going from Buffalo to Fort Myers, kind of modeling that they're going to cross the Gulf after that. So this decision had context, and also it highlighted in the heat map visual that I had the migration path through the hotspots as well. So ultimately arriving to this combination of species and origin destination did require a lot of iteration and planning, but that's just one other part of the process where I did do some planning. Okay, so on to my third tip, which is going to be color selection. And I wanted to mention this because some of the questions that I've gotten in the other talks that I've done on this topic have asked me about color. So I think it's worth mentioning here. And I have kind of 3 points to mention for colors. So first is consider user preferences for colors. When you're typically building dashboards for business audiences, sometimes a company or a particular group might have colors that they prefer. They might have a style guide or corporate standards. Those are always important things to ask for, right? If an audience, if a user has color palettes that they are already using. But for IronViz, where I considered this was in how the visual would be presented on stage on the big screen. So I looked at and I watched past IronViz competitions, the finals, and I tried to see what worked and what didn't. And what stood out to me was that dark backgrounds really look nice and show well on the big screen. So I tried to apply that to my viz as well. So going into the competition and into the build, I knew that I wanted to go with the dark background. So that was a decision I made very early on. And then the second point, so use available resources to help pick colors. So after I kind of had the base background color scheme going, all the kind of accent colors, the colors in the visualizations, and I got ideas for those by using commonly available color palette generators. And then once I found something that I liked, tweaked it here and there in order to have something that I could use for the charts and throughout the rest of the viz. So oftentimes when people ask me about how I selected those colors, like it's not some novel idea or process that I went through to select those. I used a color palette generator and then I tweaked it here and there to something that would work for the viz. And that's something you can do within your own process as well. If you have trouble sometimes maybe selecting colors. Then lastly, you always have to consider accessibility with colors. This is something you might have heard time and time again. There's certain rules you don't want to break, but there are a lot of resources out there to help you with selecting accessible colors. And that's something I did for Iron Viz. So I was checking all of the different color combinations that I had in my viz to make sure that they would ultimately be accessible for an audience. So here I just want to show this is the tool that I use to initially get ideas for my color palette. It's called Coolors, but there's several other tools out there that do the exact same thing. So any of them would work when you're trying to generate color palettes. And then for accessibility, this is one tool that I use. So you'll see here that this is the color palette that I had in my viz. And this basically checks, when you put those colors on top of each other, are they accessible? So basically anywhere where there isn't a gray box, those colors, that's an accessible color combination that has enough contrast. So for example, like this one right here, the pink on the dark background, that has enough contrast. Whereas, the pink on the yellow background would not have enough contrast. So this kind of gave me an idea of how I could combine the different colors in a way that worked, and how I shouldn't combine the colors. So this is just, one option to check contrast and accessibility. Another option is this Data Viz palette by Susie Liu. I also really like this one because, you can check if your palette meets kind of the color blindness criteria. So this is something else that you can use to check the accessibility of your palettes. Okay. So that is my third tip. And now I'll go into the last two technical tips, which are kind of related to each other, but I'll go into Tableau Desktop for both of these. So the first is going to be, I'm going to walk through kind of how I built the origin destination maps that were really important to my viz. And then the second one is the dynamic zone visibility navigation. So I just want to show before I get into it what I'm talking about. So the origin destination maps are these ones. So, picking your origin here, destination, and then how to kind of plot an origin destination line. And then the second part is going to be how I actually built the navigation throughout the whole dashboard. I did actually build all of these on one dashboard, just using dynamic zone visibility to toggle through the different components. But I'll show you how that's done in this in the last two tips here. Okay, so let's go over to Tableau. So the first thing I'm going to show is the origin destination maps. So I kind of loaded into this workbook a couple of the data sources I used in the live build. I've also kept the calculated fields in here, which I'll expand and kind of talk about as we build this. So the first thing to kind of point out are these fields here. So this airports extract file is one that I made, which is basically like a dimension table for all of the airports. So it has things like the airport ID, the city, the state, as well as the latitude, longitude for the airports. So based on that, I made a field called, can't really see it here. I guess I think I have to change the, let me just change that. So I made a field called airport with coordinates. So basically, I appended the latitude and longitude to the actual airport name. And the reason why, which you'll see in a second, is so that it could be used with the parameters in order to select an airport in the viz. So I'll just leave it at that, but you'll see how it works in a bit. So based on this field, I created two parameters. So an origin parameter and a destination parameter. So for origin, I actually for both of these parameters, I built it off of the airport with coordinates field. So I have all the values here for the origin, and the same with the destination as well. So it's the exact same parameter, basically just a duplicate. And then also important in this is the selected airport or selected origin, the selected destination. So see what I've done here is for the origin latitude, I basically split the value of the parameter on the underscore. So basically, I'm just extracting the latitude field, or I'm extracting the latitude value from that concatenated string in order to just get the latitude. And then similarly, I do the same thing for the longitude and for the destination as well. So for the destination fields, I'm looking specifically at the destination parameter and taking out the longitude value from that string. So that's how I kind of get the selected origin, the selected destination. So when I have these fields, I know what are the lat/long points for the selected origin airport and the selected destination airport, and that kind of drives the mapping, which I'll go into here. So the feature that I utilized probably the most for this viz was map layers. Really helped me to build the visually appealing and also functional maps in the viz. So the first one I'll build is for selecting the origin. So kind of the underlying field or the underlying kind of layer in all of it was the state. So I'll add the state here, and then some quick formatting that I'll do to have it look nice. So a JSON mark type to map, and then turn off some of these background layers so that I can only get the state kind of outline showing on the view here. Also hide the grid lines as well. Okay, so this is the underlying layer for all of my maps that I built. I'm just going to make the outline. Okay, so this is the state. On top of this, I want to add the airports. So in my other data set, I have a field called airport. Let me just airport point. And airport point basically just takes the airport latitude, airport longitude, and using the make point function, makes a point for that specific airport. So to add these, that's what it, actually, sorry. When I drag this on and add a new map layer, this is what the view looks like, but I need to do a bit of filtering. So one of the filters that I add here is filtering specifically for the winter migration months. So something I forgot to mention earlier is we were allowed to use Tableau Prep for IronViz. So the data sources that you're seeing here, I created these using Tableau Prep. So I have a lot of the fields that I needed for the build already in the data set that I didn't need to do in Tableau. So for example, this the airport with coordinates field, I had already created that. So it saved me some time so that I didn't have to do it in desktop itself. Okay, so I have the airports here. I'll just make them white. I'll make them, let's make them white. And then the key thing to add here is the airport with coordinates. So I add this to the detail, and the reason why is that I can feed this value into the parameter when it's all set up with the parameter actions in the dashboard. And then the last layer I will add here is the origin point. So this field, as you might expect, it makes a point out of the origin latitude and the origin longitude. So this is the selected origin that the user would have selected on the viz. So I'll add that, and then I will make it a shape. So custom. I used a nice green star for this one. So let's use there. So this is it's the default value selected, but this would be the origin airport that's selected. Okay, so let's call that origin. So I'm going to duplicate this, and then the next sheet we make is the destination selection. So really easy for this one. I have another field in the data set called destination point. And this is the same as the origin point, except I'm using the destination lat long. So I just drag that on as another layer. Again, make it a shape, and then select the X. So a really great thing about map layers and how I utilize it in the build is just by duplicating these sheets, I could, go a lot faster by just adding additional layers. So if you look at the live build, that's what I was doing, really sequencing the sheets so that I could make them in the most efficient way. So I'll just name that second feed destination. And then the last sheet we want to build is showing the line connecting origin to destination. So for this one, I have multiple calculations that kind of feed into really mapping that path. So the first one is a line field. So in Tableau, there's a calculation called make line, and make line just draws a line between the origin point and the destination point. So I could have used that, but then it would be a very skinny line that you wouldn't really be able to see on the map. So I wanted to kind of make that line a bit thicker, but also have kind of a range in what airports were detected on the travel path. So I used the buffer calculation on the line to add a 30-mile radius, essentially, around that line. So when I put this buffer calculation onto the map, you see it draws that 30-mile radius line from the origin to the destination. So I'm just going to do some reordering here in order to get it to look a bit better. Okay, so that's our kind of origin to destination map here. So on this particular view, using a lot of those Tableau geographic functions, make point, make line, buffer, etc. So yeah, I really explored a lot of the Tableau mapping capability. That was a lot of fun to do in this biz. Okay, so we'll move on to set up a dashboard. So I won't do it as nice as I kind of did it on my actual dashboard. We'll go a bit faster. I'm going to rename this one to path. So I'll add these three sheets onto, let me just make it tiled so it doesn't do that. Okay, I'll add this one in between. So here are our three sheets. So now we want to set up the parameter actions in order to capture the user selection. So there's basically two parameters that kind of drive this whole process here. One for the origin and one for the destination. So for the first one, I'm going to use my origin sheet as the source. The origin parameter is what I'm going to target. And then the field is going to be the airport with coordinates. So when the user selects a circle on this map for the airport, the kind of that concatenated string of the airport, the latitude and the longitude gets passed into the parameter. And then those latitude, longitude fields get pulled out so that we can map the origin and the destination as well. So that's kind of how I created that or built that dynamic capability in the viz. So the second parameter is on the destination. So now you'll see, hopefully it works. So when I select a origin, it updates. I can select any other destination. The line is pretty faint here, but hopefully you can see that. So it's just mapping the start point to end point on the map to connect the two lines. Okay. So that is the tip. Hopefully, it gives you some insight into the mapping capabilities within Tableau if you're not familiar or haven't used those. I definitely did run into a lot of challenges using the mapping, specifically when it's uploaded to Tableau Public. If you're familiar with Tableau Public, some weird things happen on there sometimes. So when testing this, it was not working here and there, so there had to be some kind of workarounds done. But this is ultimately how I got it working, and yeah, I really enjoyed using all the geographic, geospatial functions in Tableau. Okay, so the last tip is how to set up that dynamic zone visibility navigation. So how I'm going to do this, I'm just going to kind of set the stage a bit by adding throwing these all into a container. Oh, don't do this to me. Apologize that you have to watch me drag objects into a container, but this is how I wanted to set it up. Okay, just going to be very quick here. Okay, so basically what I'm going to build is navigating from the origin to the destination selection and then to the trip path page. So as I mentioned before, using this kind of process, I was able to build my dashboard all in one, build my viz all in one dashboard. So I used dynamic zone visibility plus parameter actions to toggle through the different views. So the first thing that I build is the button. So in my viz, I have that bottom right button that navigates through the different pages. So I'm going to build that first. And what that is it's basically just a blank object. So in my calculations here, I have a calculation called story flow. So basically, actually, before I get to that, I have a parameter that is from 1 to 7. For this demo, I'm only going to use 1 to 3, but basically my viz, I had 7 pages. So each of those pages is one particular number in this parameter. So this controls the navigation and which page the user is on. Then I also have this calculation called story flow, which, depending on the point we are at in the story parameter, it increments it by 1. And then if it's greater than 3, it loops back to the start. So it goes back to 1. Otherwise, we increment the story by 1. That's basically the logic behind this calculation. So this one drives that kind of increment through the story so we can get to the next page and then go back to the start at the very end. Okay, so I'm going to throw this onto detail. Then I also have a true and false field, which are important, but I'll get to that when I set up the dashboard, or when I set it up on the dashboard. So I won't use the blank object just because it might be a bit hard to see. but I'll use this kind of square here, which will essentially just be the button that is going to get clicked. Okay, so this is my button sheet. And then on the dashboard itself, so how I'm going to set this up is I'm going to add the button as a floating object. So I'm going to bring this in. Just going to hide it. I'll put it at the bottom right so it's kind of accurate to my viz. So that's where the sheet is on the dashboard. The other important pieces of this are the Boolean calculations. So here I have 3 Boolean calculations that are checking if we're at story point 1, story point 2, or story point 3. So these are what control the dynamic zone visibility in the dashboard. So going back to the dashboard, how I'll set this up is I'll go to each sheet. So for the origin selection, I want to use control 1. Destination selection, I want to use control 2. And then this one, the trip path, I'll use control 3. So I think we're on story point 3 right now in the parameters, so it's only showing 3. Okay, so the last thing to do here is to set up 2 actions. So the first one I'll set up is the actual parameter action. So this one is going to work based on the button sheet targeting the story, and I'm going to pass in that story flow calculation, so the one that increments based on the parameter by 1. So whenever this button is clicked now, it'll increment the parameter value by 1 to get us to the next page, because the parameter value is connected to those Boolean calculations which control what's shown. So now if I click on this, I'm able to navigate through the different pages. But I don't think anyone notices the issue because I'm sharing my screen. I actually have to double click on the button in order to get the page to change. And the reason why is because when you click on the button once, if you notice, it highlights the object. So you have to click it again to unselect the object, and then click it again to actually pass the parameter value. So what I did is I added a filter action. It's a workaround that I found just by researching on the forums, but you add a filter action that's on the button sheet, and it targets the button sheet as well. And you want to use selected fields, so you choose a true. So what I use is a false and a true calculation. So basically, this statement will never be true. False will never be equal to true. So that that button object will never be selected. So you don't have to deselect it in order to click the button again. So now if I set this up, hopefully it should work. Yes. So now you see when I'm clicking it once, so here I'm on the origin page, click it once, destination, and then I get over to the trip path. So that is, yeah, that's pretty much how I built the maps plus the dynamic zone visibility navigation. It's a bit more of a contained demo, but that is the build process that I went through. This part of incorporating the dynamic zone visibility came in a bit later in the build. Originally, I did intend to have multiple dashboards, but eventually I figured out that build separate dashboards and have the build be under 20 minutes. So I thought about using dynamic zone visibility, and it saved me quite a lot of time in the build. Okay, so I'll just go back quickly to the presentation. As I mentioned, I did write an article about my full process. I think Ojo put it in the chat, so feel free to check out that to get more behind the scenes about my approach to storytelling, design, and the build. And yeah, we can go into questions now. Ojo, if there's time.
Yes, and thank you, Ryan. This was phenomenal. There are a couple of questions, but I have one. For the completeness of the presentation, I believe you used images, and that's the background. That's the part I caught in your previous talk at one of the TUGs. Do you want to talk towards that?
Yeah, so it was going to be a bonus tip if there was time, but I can do it really quickly. I can do it really quickly here. So in my dashboard, I did use background images to kind of set the look and feel. So and then I parameterized the in the URL the actual parameter value for the story point. So what it allows me to do is basically to have one object that has all of the 7 background images for my viz. So you see here, I'm clicking through. It's changing the visuals on the dynamic zone. It's also changing the image in the URL object. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Oda. That was kind of how I linked together the dynamic zone visibility as well as the URL object all through the story parameter. So what it allows me to do is basically to have one object that has all of the 7 background images for my viz. So you see here, I'm clicking through. It's changing the visuals on the dynamic zone. It's also changing the image in the URL object. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Oda. That was kind of how I linked together the dynamic zone visibility as well as the URL object all through the story parameter.
Fantastic. The Q&A section has a couple of questions, and I encourage everyone else to plaster those questions in here. If Ryan cannot get to them, you have his coordinates. I believe he can answer them after. But Greta asked about the color checker. Was it the Coolors app, or which one was it?
Yeah, what I used was the Coolors app. That's the one I tend to use. But as I said, there's so many out there that can help you do the same thing.
Fantastic. I'll be sticking the link soon after. And I think Matt did that already, but for sure I'll do it once more. And then she also mentioned about the what's the other one? Sulu. I'm butchering the name.
Yeah, SuzyLu.com. Yeah, the other one was her. So on that website, there's a Viz palette accessibility checker. So that's one that can be used as well.
Right. Maria, thanks for joining. She asked a question. What's the benefit of keeping airport coordinates as one field and then splitting them after?
Yeah, so the reason I did that was to kind of build a dynamic selection. So in the parameter itself, I have the coordinates and the airport. So by having one parameter selection, I can, get those 2 values and connect it to the rest of the components in the viz. So it might not be the way you would think about doing it in Tableau. Like I know there's probably other ways that you could do it, but again, I was trying to work within the 20-minute build time, so I found this one to be the fastest.
Absolutely. You have to optimize for speed. So gold star to Pete and we don't know who's keeping track, but Pete did mention he had a hunch or maybe he followed you enough. Jane has a question. Do you purposely decide to exclude Hawaii and Alaska? Sure.
Yeah, that was a purpose, a decision I made on purpose. I think, well, there were 2 reasons. So we were given the data set with only the mainland United States. So that was already filtered out. So I could have gone back and included it, but the IronViz team provided it with that data excluded. And then secondly, I think just the way I built the viz with the map, it worked a bit better to only show the mainland US because of the bird migration routes. So, ones from North America migrate down to South America, so they pass through the United States. So that was also another reason because of the bird migration paths.
Thank you, Ryan. Those were all the questions. If you have more, feel free to add them here. Follow Ryan on LinkedIn. I've stuck the link and I pinned it on the chat because he has been speaking. He's been a busy bee. He's been speaking at other user groups and he's sharing different angles to what you saw today. By all means, those recordings will be uploaded much like how we would be uploading. Back to you, and thank you, Ryan. Before I let you go, back to you, Blake.
Thank you.
wanted to say thanks again for taking the time. Great tips. Wanted to say thanks for that. And then again, for everybody else, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn or connect with each other. That's also just as important. And then here you'll have RSVP on the left for our next meeting. We'll be meeting July 8th. TBD on the agenda, but it's likely going to be some work that Ojo and Blake and I have been working on. And so it will be a little bit different format from how it normally is. And then on the right, look at joining the Slack channel and continue the conversation there. We typically use that for just announcements, things that are going on in our little community. So again, thanks everybody for the time, and we'll catch you guys later.
Yeah, sorry, we have one last question. Maria is asking, what's the image host site that you've used, Ryan?
Yeah, I think I replied to Maria privately. She DM'd me, but yeah, for everyone, it's called File Garden, and the reason I use that is because it had the best URL for parameterizing in Tableau. So yeah, there's different options, but that was the best one for me.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, folks, don't miss out on signing up for the next retail tug, because that's going to be fantastic too. We're going to be talking about a retail topic. Blake and Matt will be showing their HEP presentation, or a highlight of that. And yeah, we want to keep that number growing from almost 250 to the moon and back. Have a fantastic afternoon. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, everyone who showed up today. We'll catch you soon. Bye.